welcome to HPS. I'm Isaac, and today we are doing an install video of the HPS exhaust on the new and exciting Lynx Boondocker sled. This install video will work for any of the Lynx running the Ski-Doo G4 chassis and the 850 E-Tech motors. Tools needed to install the HPS exhaust are very minimal. All you will need is a long Phillips screwdriver, a 17mm open end wrench, a 10mm socket on a fairly long extension, a spring puller. I prefer these flexible ones that makes it easy to reach the spring hooks that might be hard to get to, as well as a T25 Torx bit. What should be included with the HPS exhaust is, of course, the exhaust itself, a 12-inch extension wire loom for the EGT probe, and just a little bit of heat tape. So let's go ahead and start the install of the exhaust. To begin, we have to take a few parts and panels off of the sled itself. We'll start with the side panels. On the Lynx, there are 4 clips and 2 bungees to take the side panels off. You'll want to take both sides off. We now want to remove the hood. To do so, you will need the T25 Torx bit. I'm using a power tool just to make this process faster, but there are a total of 8 bolts that you need to remove in order to take the hood off. The first bolt is right here on both sides where the side panels were towards the front. I usually take these bolts and I just put them in this little storage compartment on top of the sled right here. So both sides of those will need to come off, as well as back here by the gas tank. There are bolts holding the panel, the hood on right here. And then these 2 bolts right here by the instrument gauge. If you lift the storage compartment up, it will reveal 2 more bolts on both sides. These need to come out. And what that will do is it'll allow this gauge to come up and out, but it is connected by this plug. To remove this plug, you take your thumb and pull this red lock back, which will then allow you to squeeze the plug right here and remove it from the gauge. Once the gauge is out, you can remove the storage compartment, but don't forget that we have a little 12-volt accessory plug right here. It's just a simple plug that you squeeze, separate. So the reason why you want to remove the gauge in the storage compartment is it will then reveal 2 more bolts right here by the steering column. You'll want to remove both of those. And then I put those. These ones look like they are a little bit shorter than the other ones that I have pulled out. So keep in mind, keep track of which bolts go where. There are 3 plugs underneath the storage compartment that we just removed. 2 for the lights, and they come out with just the regular squeeze and pull. Squeeze and pull. And then the last plug is the airbox sensor. This one's kind of tricky to get undone sometimes. What it requires is quite a stiff push on the clip right there. It'll snap and then you can pull it off. Then I take these wires and I kind of wrap them around the brake line. It just keeps the wires out of the way for when you put the hood back on, you're not pinching wires. The last thing you'll need to do before you remove the hood off the Lynx is you need to undo the airbox. So there is a tube hose clamp right above the clutch cover and underneath the plastic hood. If you can see right here, you will need to undo that, and that is done by the long Phillips screwdriver. The most important thing is, when putting this back together, you do not forget to put the airbox back together. Once we have all the wires unplugged from the hood, as well as the airbox loosened, all you need to do is pull the hood, and you'll find a little bit of resistance as you pull the hood. There are some body clips that need to come out from the front as well as the back, but then also the other resistance you are going to feel is the airbox. The hose clamped rubber hose onto a plastic airbox. It still has a grip on it. It's loose, still has a grip on it. And so you kind of have to use your hand and just kind of work that rubber piece off the airbox. Once you do, the whole hood comes right off the sled. We now need to focus on removing the stock exhaust. And the best way to do that is on the stock exhaust, on the neck of it, where it connects from the pipe to the muffler itself, is a heat shield. There's two little retaining clips that you just pull like so. Once those clips are removed, you can now remove the two halves off the neck of the muffler. This is just a heat insulation barrier. You take your spring puller and you remove two exhaust springs that connects the pipe and the muffler together. You want to get your 10mm socket. Again, I'm using a power tool just to make this fast, but you will want to remove this bolt behind the exhaust muffler right down here. This bolt will actually, especially if you're using a ratchet, will take some time to come out and undo. Once that bolt is loose, you will then want to make sure that you grab the bolt and the spring that it just compressed. Don't lose it or drop it underneath the motor. It's very difficult to get it out. So you just want to make sure that you have a hold of both the spring and the bolt, and this is what it looks like right there. The last thing you'll need to do to remove the stock exhaust out of the sled is you will need to unplug this plug right here. This is the EGT plug that connects into the muffler, but it's also connected right here to the chain case of the sled. You want to unclip that first, because if you yank on the muffler before undoing that, you risk pulling the wires out of the EGT. Okay, once that's all done, you can just lift up and out, and you have the stock exhaust out of the sled. On the back of the stock muffler, there are a couple parts that you will want to move from the stock muffler to the HPS muffler. On the back, there are 3 rubber grommets as well as the EGT probe. You want to start with the upper grommet. It has a little aluminum sleeve through it. You'll want to take the aluminum sleeve and the rubber grommet, and you will want to move it to the top bracket of the HPS. And then you will want to put the aluminum sleeve through the top grommet. Then you will want to take one of the 2 bottom rubber grommets, remove it, and put it in the bottom bracket of the HPS. Once that is done, you will want to then take the 17mm open-end wrench and remove the EGT probe from the stock exhaust. We don't want to put the EGT probe into the HPS exhaust quite yet. We'll do it after we've installed it into the sled. Just for the fun of it, while we have the 2 exhausts out, let's go ahead and stick them on the scale. So this is the stock exhaust without the rubber grommets nor the EGT probe. Also keep in mind, this muffler has been run actually quite a bit, so it is saturated with oil. So the stock exhaust is coming in at 15.8 pounds. Now we will weigh the HPS exhaust. Also keep in mind, this exhaust also has been run just a little bit. It has a few rides on it on this sled, so it does have a little bit of oil in it as well. And it comes in at 7.2 pounds. All right, now that you have the rubber grommets on the back of the HPS exhaust, we can now install it onto the sled. And the way you want to do that is, it's really simple. You'll want to make sure that you put this rubber grommet onto the front peg on the chassis of the sled. You put it in like so, while you're bringing the muffler to the pipe, holding it together like that. You want to make sure that the cylinder bushing that is in the top rubber grommet is all the way up and slides over the chassis. And you will put the bolt in there and then tighten it down all the way. From there, you will want to take the 2 exhaust springs and spring the HPS exhaust to the pipe. We need to place and position the EGT probe. It will go into the top of the muffler like so, and you will want to position it towards the back underneath the neck of the exhaust. Now when you tighten it, you want to make sure that you're not touching the exhaust with the end of the CGT probe. You don't want it vibrating or anything on the probe. You will want to just barely pull it away and then tighten it just snug. You do not want to over tighten on it. At this point, it is optional if you want to run the 12-inch extended EGT wire loom. If some of these EGT probes have come with an extra short wire tail on the end of them, if you have an extra short one, then it is almost required that you have this EGT extension. This one isn't a short one, so at this point you can choose whether or not to run it. If you don't want to run it, then you will have to unclip this plug from the chain case. And the way you do that is on the bottom side behind the plug, there is a white clip. And you need to take a flathead screwdriver and separate the white clip from the plug itself. As you separate it, you can then pull down on the plug and it will disconnect itself from the chain case. A lot of people want to just take the whole plug and pull on it and yank it out of the chain case. That's not the proper way. Also, that's risk of potentially damaging the wires in the plug on the sled. From there, you can then take your plug, your EGT plug, and then the sled plug, put it together, and then secure this plug to the side with the zip tie or however you choose to secure it. If you choose to run the wire loom, then you can keep that plugged in, route it around. Just make sure you secure the wire from too much motion, wearing out, banging on something, or even touching the exhaust. The HPS muffler is CNC bent for the purpose of fitting the stock heat shield if you choose to run it again. The only thing you may run into is the bracket on the neck of the muffler right back here. You may have to trim a little bit of the aluminum right here to clear that bracket, but other than that, this should fit perfectly on the neck of the HPS muffler if you choose to run the stock heat shield. If you do not run the stock heat shield, then it is recommended to take the heat tape that should have come with your HPS exhaust and put it on this plastic snow deflector behind the neck of the muffler. This is the only place that we have had heat issues. Is right here where the neck of the muffler gets close to this plastic piece. And so if you choose not to run the stock heat shield, then what you will want to do is unscrew this screw from the coolant bottle and this will unclip from the frame of the sled, and you'll just run the heat tape right where it is close, about from here to the bottom here, where it is close to the neck of the HPS muffler. And that will help prevent any melting or bubbling of this plastic snow deflector. The other thing is, we'd also take some of the heat tape and just run a little strip over the EGT wire. We haven't had any issues, but it's also just an extra precaution to keep that from heating up at all. I think this time we're going to go ahead and put the stock heat shield on the HPS muffler. We've now installed the HPS exhaust onto the Lynx snowmobile. Securely in there, it's not going anywhere. This is also a good chance to just make sure everything is fine in the sled. Sometimes this probe here in the pipe will come loose. Make sure that's snug. Make sure all your bolts and the manifolds are good. And if all is well, then we can now start putting the sled back together. So putting the sled back together is just the reverse of how we took everything off. You will start by putting the hood on, but also keep in mind that there are a couple things you want to look out for. The first one is you want to make sure that these guiders clips on the front of the hood are matching inside the belly pan of the sled. On both sides, you will want to make sure those are in. Okay, at the same time, you will want to make sure that the back of the hood is clipped in properly. Right here, there's a retaining clip there. And once you push on the front of the sled and it comes together, those will lock, and then you can screw those in. But also, you want to make sure that the boot that you loosened earlier on the airbox is properly snug and put back onto the airbox. In my opinion, this is probably one of the hardest parts, but yet one of the most crucial parts of putting the sled back together. It'll feel like the boot is on the airbox, and a lot of the times it is on the airbox, but you just have to take that extra time to make sure it is. You don't want any air leaks between the airbox and the intake of the motor. Once you're for sure that that boot is back on the airbox, you tighten the hose clamp again. And as you tighten it, just make sure you feel that it's tightening onto the airbox. The airbox is on now. Go back to plugging it together. You want to do your two headlights, your airbox. Okay. And then before you put the instrument gauge back in, you want to make sure that you secure the hood to the machine. So the four long ones, if you remember right, went on both sides from the front here and on the back here. I'm going to do the two on the back by the gas tank. I'm going to do the two up front. You want to put the two bolts right here by the steering column. Okay, once your 6 bolts on your hood are tight, you can then put your storage compartment back in. Don't forget to plug this accessory 12-volt plug back in right here. And then your instrument gauges. The way these go in, you can see how that clips there to there. You go start from the back and tighten it forward. But you want to remember that we need to plug this in first. This lays down like that. Once the hood is secured back onto the sled, now it's time to put the side panels back on. 2 bungees, 2 clips, you just successfully installed the HPS exhaust on the brand new Lynx Boondocker DS sled. With this exhaust, you can expect a close to 9 pounds weight savings from stock, as well as a 5 horsepower increase in the mid-range. That's around 7,200 RPM. That's where the HPS comes on strongest, is in the mid-range. And as well as on the top end, you're looking at about a 2 horsepower increase on the top end, which is about a 7,950 RPM. That's where we recommend no more than 8,000 peak RPM. If you're on the trail at this point, full throttle or climbing a mountain, and you find that your RPMs are going beyond 8,000, like 81, 82, we recommend bumping down on your clickers. And with that, you're ready to hit the snow, and you'll have the best performing, best sounding exhaust on the mountain. Be sure to check us out at teamhps.com. Also, as well, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube at Team HPS or High Performance Sports. Thanks for watching HPS.